It does sound like those crap American podcasts that you hear.
Yeah.
Sorry, Amolith.
No, I agree.
Ask the Host, episode 17. I'm Joe.
I'm Amolith.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Graham.
Hello, chaps. The idea of this show is very simple. You send in your questions to us, show@askthehost.com, and we answer them. The catch is, they can be about anything except for Linux and open source. Before we start, a quick thank you to everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really appreciate that. And if you support us on Patreon, you get these episodes 2 weeks early. You can learn more at askthehost.com/support. So the first question, Jezra asks, how do you notify your future self of events/reminders?
I'll get my boring answer out of the way. Google Calendar, because we have a Google app subscription as a family, and my wife and I just put stuff in there, and it's the lowest barrier to entry for her. So it's a pretty boring answer, but we've just probably about a year's worth of Google Calendar events in there at this point.
My partner and I use a Nextcloud calendar for events, but for reminders, I use whatever to-do app I happen to be using at that moment. Which means I have reminders scattered across like 12 different apps over the years.
Well, I too use Google Calendar, and that reminds me of most things, but then that's only really events. But to remind myself about general stuff, like open the dishwasher, for example, I just schedule a message on Telegram to myself.
Have you scheduled messages often?
I'm the same as Gary, I'm afraid. Google Calendars for the whole family, even my mum, even my friends. I have one for like spare weekends we have if we want to meet up and go biking. It's just, I'm sorry, Google already knows everything about me, so knowing that I'm going mountain biking at the weekend, I don't care.
Yeah, and I've tried in anger with various to-do and note-taking apps. Like I had a brief stint with Obsidian recently where I was trying to use like a to-do plugin so I could say, I had a meeting with this client and these are the actions that came out of it, and they would all populate into a to-do list. But I just don't have enough self-control to keep putting notes in there, to be honest with you. I find myself scribbling them in a notebook, or I forget my laptop, or I don't tick things off for a few days, and then it just all becomes this mess of, have I done that? Haven't I done that? And I just give up. So I find calendar blocking is the only way to really make sure that I know I'm going to get stuff done.
I think the one thing I keep coming back to is little half-size index cards and writing to-do items on those. And I have a little 3D printed stand under my monitor that you can slot the index card into, and it gets propped up so I can see it there under my monitor all day, every day. That's the one I keep coming back to. Very low tech.
That sounds like a recipe for ad blindness. You just, like banner ads back in the day, you would just completely ignore. And I would just tune that out if it was staring at me all day, every day. That's why I have my paper calendar to my left. I have to look over there, and then I have all the releases for all the episodes. And so, like, once I have edited it and got it all ready for publishing, I cross it out with a Sharpie. And there's something very satisfying about that crossing it out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the physical act of that. So, yeah, mine is just a mess, a confusing mess of Google Calendar, Telegram notifications, and actual paper calendar. Sean asks, what did you enjoy most and least during your time in school? Any year/grade? All of it is what I hated school.
I don't know. I think there were some things that I enjoyed about school, and there were some things that I didn't enjoy so much about school. I hated PE. And I will always remember my PE teacher calling me an ungrateful cunt because I had turned up with a broken hand and no note. And he decided that my hand wasn't broken. I just didn't want to do the lesson, which was fun. But yeah, I mean, I've many happy memories of doing things that perhaps I shouldn't have been doing at school, like finding out the Wi-Fi password or sitting in the computer lab before lessons started, and all that kind of thing was always enjoyable. I just remember, like, not really getting in trouble, but getting a talking to for, like, not going to form time because we wanted to sit in the computer lab and play a game of Doom or Quake or something across the network.
Man, me and Graham feel so old now. The idea of Wi-Fi at school.
I mean, this was pretty early, and we'd all decided that changing the host name of our laptops to the same style of host name as the teachers' laptops would meant that we were completely indiscoverable on the network, which lasted for all about 5 minutes. So there was a bunch of enjoyable stuff about school. I mean, there was also a bunch of stuff that was just rubbish, to be honest. And I think I probably did end up learning more and having a bit of a better understanding for the value of learning after I'd left school, to be honest with you.
When I was homeschooled, I loved being able to explore almost any academic topic, and mom would just say, yeah, okay, go dig into that thing, learn what you can, and we'll make it part of your curriculum. And that was awesome. And for things like PE, instead of some sort of structured PE by a teacher in a gym or something, I did martial arts, I did Zumba, I rode my bike around the city. It was awesome. And then when I went into public school, it was kind of a waste. I ended up repeating the same material for years that I had already done when I was homeschooled. So most of my early public school was not fun. Pretty much all of being homeschooled was awesome.
Graham, can you remember going to school?
There are parts of it that I enjoyed, especially when I was young. When I was like in primary school or infant school, I was massively into Sherlock Holmes when I was about 7 or 8. And I remember I created at our primary school a detective club that was allowed to run through the breaks or the recess. And loads of people joined because they didn't want to be out on the playground. And that was a lot of fun. But when I was older than that, PE, I hated PE. I also really hated RE, religious education, especially at the school I had. The people that taught were, I don't know, if it had been called philosophy, even with similar subject matter, I wouldn't have been so bothered about it. But a friend and I nearly got expelled for drawing a penis on my RE book. And later nearly got thrown out for bunking off generally and not finishing my coursework, and that became my kind of general pattern. I probably shouldn't admit all that, but we did do computers. Even when I was 15 or 16, it was like the first GCSE, and we had it in our secondary school or high school, but then I couldn't study it at A-level, so I really enjoyed computers and then couldn't take them any further until I went to university.
I quite enjoyed RE, religious education, because we studied not just Christianity, it was like all world religions, and I learned just a little bit about loads of different religions, and I found it really enlightening, I suppose. I feel like that was one of the most valuable bits of my education, was to learn about loads of different cultures. So that I suppose is my serious answer. What I was going to say is what I hated most was games, which was a bit like PE, and what I loved most was games. Now, let me explain. So most of my schooling, games was like, you go out and play football or rugby or cricket or whatever. And I just hated that. Like, I just don't like being outside generally unless I'm drinking. So it was just a nightmare, especially like playing rugby in the freezing cold and like having to just huddle up with other people, like other smelly boys and stuff. I just didn't like it one bit. But then when I got to the age of, I think about 14, one afternoon a week, was it Tuesday or Thursday, whatever, the whole afternoon was games, and you were expected to just pick the sport that you were into, and you would just go and do all afternoon that sport. Well, it turns out that there wasn't much checking of that, and so me and the other musician types used to just hang around in the music department all afternoon, just chatting, playing instruments, not like seriously making music or anything, but just hanging out. And it would just be a really chill time where we would just hang out with each other. And that, I mean, the social aspects of school, again, are kind of the worst and the best, right? You've got the dickhead bullies, but then you've got the like really cool people who you end up friends with. And yeah, that is my lasting memory from school, is hanging around with my friends. And at least one of them I'm still friends with now, all these years later.
Yeah, you make a good point. I've got a lot of fond memories of, I guess, not bunking off of lessons, but finding other things that have educational value that maybe I should have been doing while the lessons were going on. Me and a group of close friends ended up being the people who did all of the sound and lighting for school productions. And it was always a great excuse to go and spend a couple of days rigging lights and climbing scaff towers and setting up PA systems and things, which was was always a good laugh. And yeah, there's, like you say, a lot of good memories from things like that. And arguably I've learnt more tangible skills from that than reading of Mice and Men for the 5th time in 2 years or whatever we ended up doing in English literature class.
That's a good book, though.
I mean, it is, but there's only so many times that I can say that Curly's wife's dress was red because she was dangerous or whatever it is that you wrote in GCSE English essays.
Yeah, the Vaseline and the glove.
It's funny, I was going to say something very similar, being involved with the sound and the kind of behind-the-scenes production of stuff at school. I got involved with that as well. And I used to love being behind the scenes or under the stage when something was going on. That was a good part of it. I'm trying to think of things that, I did enjoy those aspects of it. And I, too, still have friends from back then. The person that we got caught with the RE book, I'm still very good friends with.
Never again will I ever get a lesson in school where I have to cut in half a Ford Fiesta to be the car from Grease Lightning.
I went to an early college for high school, and we had no music program, no sports, nothing like that. It was all either through the college or through your local high school. And I don't remember why, but for whatever reason, we couldn't really join the local high school music activities. So I started my own music club, and to my knowledge, it's still going, which is really cool. But we actually performed during some school events, and that was awesome. We had a lot of fun doing that stuff.
Wow. 18 months later, it's still going, Amolith.
Been more like 5 years.
I mean, given the variety of instruments that you play, I can only imagine that, unlike our school gigs, it didn't turn into a Metallica tribute band or something. Because I think that there was a certain point where Metallica was banned in our school because it was just like Enter the Sandman and then Ride the Lightning, and then insert other Metallica song here, one after the other, just terribly performed.
It was all just Oasis covers at my school.
We had good variety. Some folk, because I have a ton of folk background. We did some pop stuff, some jazz, actually. There were a bunch of musicians that wanted to do music things, and we all just paired up in small groups. It was fun.
Mike asks, paint everything in the world just 3 colours. Which colours would those be? RGB. Next question.
Black, white, and grey.
That is actually what I would pick, I think. Black, white, and grey.
I was going to say magenta, cyan, and yellow. It seems to work fine for printers.
More seriously, colors I do enjoy are things like sunlight through trees. It's hard to find a word or a hex value to describe that, but that and moss and dirt.
You've got me nostalgic for my school days now, so I was a huge Prince fan. So it would have to be purple or his later stage of peach and black.
I think it would be a kind of sunset orangey red, green, and maybe a kind of browny earthy colour.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of earthy tones to repaint the world in. There's something calming and relaxing about that.
The problem with sunsets is that it's not one colour. The whole point is it's a massive spectrum of colours. And I don't think you could capture that in just one colour, could you?
Well, they didn't say we didn't get to blend the 3 colours, right? So by that notion, you could just do the 3 primary colours, and then you effectively have every colour. But that feels a bit like cheating.
Well, that's what I said to RGB, isn't it? Although I know it'd be yellow. I don't know my primary colours, do I? Yellow, blue, and red? Yeah, that's what we need. That's the answer. Mark asks, which country has the best food? There is one very, very clear answer to this, but I'm going to let you lot answer first.
I don't know if it's the best food, but I really, really like the food from the Czech Republic, Slovakia, those kind of countries. Just that really stodgy, filling, meat-based food. It just appeals to me in some way. Maybe in the same way that the food I cook is always quite boring stew or some kind of other meat-based dinner. But it's just that, but a bit different, isn't it? So I'm going to go with that. Czech Republic or any surrounding country that has kind of stew and those kind of foods.
I've thought about this a bit because I've had some amazing food, and I've been lucky enough to have some amazing food in some great countries. And the country I'm going to choose is not the place I've probably had the best meal. And it's predictably the place where I feel like you can stop somewhere randomly and real people have cared about the ingredients and put something together, and it's France.
Yep. That's the correct answer, Graham. Well done. Yeah. Don't judge a country by its best food. Judge it by its worst food. Judge it by the motorway services. You go to a motorway services in France, right? And you get something basic like chicken and chips. That's fries for you, Amolith. And it's actually nice. It's not horrible. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's fine. Whereas most other countries, you stop on a major road and the food is just terrible.
What do you mean? There's nothing wrong with a W.H. Smith sandwich that's been sat in a fridge for like 4 days. Perfectly fine.
Especially if you get the meal deal.
Exactly. It's like a £5. What more do you want?
Gas station hot dogs that have been turning there for 10 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas French people just won't put up with that shit, man. They just won't deal with that. They're like, nope, it's going to be made of actual ingredients and it'll be basic, but it'll be nice.
Oh, Amolith, you just gave me an awful flashback to getting some nachos from a gas station in Reno somewhere. And it's just like instant regret. As soon as I ate it, I knew I was going to be ill, but I was that hungry that I just had to do it anyway.
I don't think I've ever bought any of the fresh, quote unquote, food at gas stations.
I mean, this was a guy in like rural Nevada. Why would he lie?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pick on the UK particularly. There are some places where you can get incredible food here in the UK, and maybe I've had one of my best meals ever here. But the difference between here and France is that you can drop into some random bar and the people in the kitchen, they're not going through a load of instructions while they put stuff in the microwave and get it out at the right time and just dish it on a plate without any kind of care or attention. Unfortunately, in the UK, if you just randomly stop at a pub somewhere, that's probably what you're going to get. And I don't understand the cultural difference, I suppose, in the kitchens or in wanting to serve people food. It's just different, and I like it in France.
Well, I think that in the UK, we're brought up eating like fish fingers and stuff like that, whereas French people just won't stand for that. They just have a different culture, as you say, that involves cooking. And it might not necessarily be super healthy because I think they use quite a lot of oil and stuff like that, but it's just a different culture of cooking. I think Italy, to some extent, is similar, but I just don't happen to really enjoy much Italian food apart from pizza, which is not even really Italian. I like American-style pizza. So, yeah, France is just the best. Amolith, are you going to try and defend America?
No.
Good.
No, I'm bored of American food. I grew up eating. I love Indian and Thai food the most, I think. Especially when extremely spicy, but as long as there is still strong flavor underneath the spice.
Cohen asks, do you feel bad after swatting a mosquito?
No. I hate mosquitoes. Kill them with fire.
I think it depends on your intent, right? Like if it's this mosquito is really annoying and it's going to bite me, I'd like to get rid of it before it does, then that's fine. If it's a murderous rampage of I'm going to kill this because it's the first thing in sight that's smaller than me, maybe that's not so okay. I don't know.
Sure. I hate them because anytime they're around, I end up covered in bug bites everywhere.
I think if you swat it on some white linen and it's full of blood, I feel bad about that. I wish I'd taken it somewhere else and murdered it. But otherwise, no.
Yeah, I kind of used to feel bad when I was a bit more of a hippie, I think. But then more recently, I've started to get a lot of bites in the summer and they get really angry, as doctors would say. Like I scratch them loads and they like really swollen up and I have to put cream on them. And I just find it to be a real nightmare. So now, no, not at all. And honestly, flies as well. I mean, I really shouldn't admit this, but when it was really hot, our bin and our recycling bin got full of maggots this year. And when you see like 500 maggots squiggling around, the first thing I did was get on Amazon and buy a bug zapper and plugged it in. And yeah, you're just sitting there and then just like, it's just crack. And I'm like, yes, got one.
I think there's a difference between those really annoying flying bugs and something that you can just move outside gently, though. If it's a ladybird or a spider or something that you can just pick up on a piece of paper and move it outside, that's fine. But you've got no chance of doing that with a fly or a mosquito or something. They're just annoying.
So it seems that none of us are Buddhists then.
I do like the idea. I wish I felt bad about killing mosquitoes, but I don't.
They're like the Google Calendar of Buddhism.